And for us at ACE, hacking also has been the #1 trigger that we've seen, surpassing, I think in years prior, we saw the lost laptop, lost PDA as a more frequent event. I almost wonder now if people aren't reporting these instances knowing what happens as a result of a lost laptop and the repercussions of it, and potentially they could get in trouble in their workplace by reporting it. It may almost have a dunning effect on that. I haven't seen a ton of litigation unless the breach has been large. Really, our large breaches, it doesn't seem that plaintiff's counsel has made it worth their while necessarily, unless of course there is some obvious misuse of data and some financial harm as a result. But really the litigation we've seen has only been on our large breaches so far.
When you see those, are you seeing differentials in cost? Because those large breaches tend to get a lot of attention, both internally and externally. Are you seeing a differentiation between kind of the size of the breach, and let's use dollar values as well as actual records, in how they're being handled? In that, can the large breach be a smaller event if it's handled correctly?
Well, it would be a smaller event to the extent the cost per record probably winds up being a lot cheaper, if only because the notification costs, credit monitoring, if it comes out of it, would wind up being less on a large-scale bulk basis. Just the cost of that would be, but the overall amount would wind up, I think just on a per number amount, you're still going to wind up just at a greater overall amount, even though maybe you're at a less cost per record kind of basis. Okay. We've seen, at least in one instance, where a party with multiple breaches that has had regulatory inquiry has basically wound up signing off on a regulatory, in effect, penalty should they have a future breach. I'm not sure if anyone else has seen that before, but essentially parties with multiple breaches could wind up, in effect, having heightened and multiplied penalties for a future breach on a regulatory basis based on agreements that they may have signed off with on regulatory agencies.
Are we seeing a causal relationship, whether proximate or extenuated, between a regulatory investigation or regulatory action and a civil action? I mean, my question being, if you lose the data and maybe no one gets harmed, so to speak, so it wasn't theft, but the regulators get involved. The state attorney general decides to bring an action under investigation under HIPAA. Are you going to see a civil action after that regulator gets done with your client?
I think you will, because I think even in other areas of litigation, if a client or an insured or whatever outfit has a regulatory issue and a problem, and they wind up essentially being spanked by a regulator and being told they did X, Y, and Z wrong, the plaintiff's bar is just sitting there waiting, and they're going to look and see what the regulator said, and they're going to use that as the basis for future litigation.
What's been your biggest frustration in managing through the claims with the insureds? Has there been any single common thread that you've seen in dealing with clients, or is it all, is each client unique and special?
Well, I'll start on this. I would say each one is unique and special, especially if there are any ACE clients in the audience. But secondly, what I think the biggest frustration that I've seen, and this relates to all claims, but maybe for data breach claims in particular, is when a data breach occurs, there's more of a panic type situation among the insured that I see. And insureds that get sued can do this too. But there's a tendency to not think of insurance until well into the breach response. And be that as it may, in a breach scenario, a lot of times it's an insured's first encounter with a data breach. And when they move forward, a lot of times they take missteps and they don't get us involved until well into the process. And it turns out that maybe they didn't respond correctly, maybe they didn't respond efficiently, and we've seen that in repeated instances where if they reported to us right away, we could have helped direct the response, got them to a data breach coach, got them to vendors that would have been able to provide them with an efficient way to respond, and really kind of maybe taking the steam out of the breach and really get it under control much more quickly and much more efficiently.